We did it! We deactivated the bomb!
Yes, Captain, I'm aware of the issues. Well, Emerald is... Wait a minute. You don't know what color emerald is? It's bloody green, you dunderhead! No, that doesn't make it Christmas! Okay, listen, Captain, I have an episode I need to do on Lady Mòrag, so can this wait? Yes, there will be Albacavanish-sized spoilers. No, I don't want to buy an Ethernet! Okay, I'm hanging up the phone, just gonna hang it up. Wait, we were recording? Have you ever seen a character that's just so cool or appealing that you really want to know what the source material is and you want to experience that piece of fiction that they came from? That was practically myself when Nintendo revealed the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 trailer at 2017's E3, and I got one look at what was one of the strongest designs I had seen in the entire Xenoblade franchise. Full uniform, the single thread of hair dropping from the hat, blue flames with twin swords, and they immediately come in swinging and effortlessly deflecting blasts of fire to a sick guitar? I don't even need to see anymore, just take my money! This character left a very early impression on me, and that character is none other than Mòrag's Special Inquisitor, Mòrag Ladare. That first glimpse at Mòrag certainly kept me hyped for Xenoblade Chronicles 2's release, alongside the return of a narrative focus and other variables. But when I played the game, I was glad to find out that she was much more than meets the eye. With a staunch but fun personality, Mòrag climbed the ranks to be one of my favorite characters from the Xenoblade Chronicles series. But what about Mòrag specifically do I think makes her such a strong character and one of the greats for me? That's what we're here to find out. As with every episode of Dramatis Personae, we'll be performing a deep inspection of the character at hand with categories such as design and personality, gameplay, character arc, and specific scenes to discover how they all contribute to the development of a strong character. Let's put that thought into practice, shall we? And start with the very same feature that initially captivated me. Mòrag's design is likely the most intricate and detailed one from Xenoblade Chronicles 2's cast, as well as one of my personal favorites from the series. A shade of blue akin to indigo composes most of her outfit, while the gold armor on her cap, shoulder, waist, and lower legs complement that blue wonderfully. The other two colors are white and red, with both acting as accents to the blue and rounding out the palette on display. The devil is in the details, however, as pieces of the gold accessories are littered with symbols that resemble gears, possibly a reference to Mòrag's mechanical nature. But if we dive a little bit deeper...
Could it really be true?
This can't be real.
The Aegaeon crest also rests front and center on the hat. This emblem normally has 4 symbols in each of the escutcheon's corners, and although they aren't visible on Mòrag's design, I think that they are important to her identity as Mòrag's Special Inquisitor. Given that the Scottish accents of the Aegaeon people play a role in their development, I'll be using the meanings of UK heraldry and coat of arms resources as references. The shield in the top left corner seems to hold a simple meaning of defense. The sun in the top right represents glory and brilliance, as well as a sense of authority. This idea connects quite well to the values instilled in Mòrag, as she takes great pride in the success of her empire and holds a position of power within the hierarchy. The bottom half is where it gets a little bit tricky, and I think the bottom left corner might have less of a connection to heraldry, but a treasure within the empire in the form of a jewel, which would stand in for Brighid and Aegaeon, who are referred to as the crown jewels of the empire. The bottom right corner is the most unclear out of them all, but it could depict 3 core crystals to symbolize Mòrag's status as a militaristic empire and the ability for a driver to work with 3 resonated blades at once. You can actually catch a very good glimpse of the crest in Niall's throne room, with colors attached to each of the different symbols. The yellow and blue on the assumed sun and core crystals respectively would make sense given their natural colors. And these actually only make up a fraction of the crest imagery. There's also a plentiful amount of weapons incorporated into the design, like tilted spears or lances symbolizing devotion through service, and my personal favorite design choice, the hilt and strong of a sword, which is emblematic of qualities like honor and liberty, dividing the escutcheon into its 4 corners. There are also these 2 pillar-like features that I interpreted as the 2 towers of Hardhigh Palace due to their similar structure. Putting it briefly, the crest is full of detail and symbolism that evokes qualities of Mòrag as well as Mòrag herself. Not to mention that the emblem has so many parts of the whole to consider, just like Mòrag's outfit, so it's kind of a perfect fit. The entire uniform acts as personification of Mòrag, as the stiff attire mimics Mòrag's calm composure and serious demeanor. As the Special Inquisitor, she is heavily fixated on the prosperity of her empire and how she can achieve it. She will have moments of levity and humor, but they are heavily overshadowed by her unwavering loyalty and disposition. Mòrag's personal interests will often clash with her strong sense of duty, which is a topic we'll fully dive into later, but most of her decisions rarely deter from that strict path that is serving her homeland. This rigidness is also evident with her idle animations. Her default position echoes that of a military stance with a rigid form and her hands layered behind her back, while each of her idle animations barely break this, with movement only happening to stretch or adjust her hat and gloves. Finally, let's talk about her main weapons, which are Brighid's whip swords. If Ivy from Soul Calibur did not make it clear enough, whip swords are kinda just the sickest. I think that double whip swords are great because it allows for an aggressive and oppressive onslaught of attacks, which further show Mòrag's abilities as a fighter. Much of the characteristics, such as the blue flames and flowers on the pommel and right before the base of the blade, are tied to Brighid, but the blue flames seriously build up Mòrag's reputation for the player. Blue flames reach hotter temperatures than the typical orange flame, so not only do they look badass, but they allow for subconscious power scaling between Rex and Pyra, as well as Mòrag and Brighid in their early encounters. With all of the elements doing their part, it's pretty clear that a lot of thought and consideration went into Mòrag's design. But if I could gush for just 1 second here. Oh my god, this design is so cool! This character and design were just built for badass poses. Like, look at this! And the half cape just brings everything together. Ah! On the gameplay side of things, Mòrag generally will fill the role of a tank for the team, as her two story blades, Brighid and Aegaeon, can hit insane block rate numbers, alongside their naturally moderate defenses. It should be noted that Aegaeon's damage output is pretty low, which means that it'll be harder to build aggro on Mòrag and, well, kill things. So you'll want to supplement him with Ox Cores to boost his damage threshold. Luckily, his crit rate is quite strong, so augmenting that with items like a Crimson Headband is a good idea. Xenoblade Chronicles 2's method of building can allow for high customization, so there are a lot of variables to consider, such as your blade slots as well as your teammates. A strong partner to couple with Mòrag is Rex wielding Mithra, since Foresight can help to increase the party's evasion, and Anchor Shot can topple the enemy, following Brighid inflicting Break with Azure to Hellfire, which can then set up for extra damage with Radiance. Shulk can also be used as a teammate since his skill Minato Speed will similarly increase the team's evasion, making Mòrag that much harder to hit. Essentially, Mòrag can reach Ultra Instinct. With such high evasion, there are some accessories you can take advantage of, such as an Abyss Mask to deal 110% more at the risk of 55% more damage taken. Although, since you are speed, it makes it a pretty safe risk ironically enough with a high payout. The whip attachment also stands out with its ability to bolster the damage of whip swords up to 29%. Aside from the whip swords, some of the other classes that Mòrag can use quite effectively are Chroma Katanas, Shield Hammers, and Mega Lances due to their speed and selection of arts available that range from raising evasion to inflicting topple. Brighid and Aegaeon are the two story blades Mòrag is given access to. However, other blades that prove to be strong are Corvin in the later game, Wulfric, and Praxis. And despite showing her capabilities as a fighter with a plethora of weapons, there are some that should be avoided. Ether Cannons, Knuckle Claws, and Bitballs are usually less effective than her other options due to the subpar speed of her attacks, or the selection of arts available with said weapons being lackluster. It might be harder to see Mòrag's years of training in these weapons, but it can be found elsewhere. The evasion-based skills provided by Brighid and Aegaeon with Firewalker and Dance of Flames, as well as Like Water and Enlightenment respectively, allow for Mòrag to be an incredibly fun evasion tank, which I think is such an awesome idea for a class. A lot of the skills on her affinity chart will also reference her military training with words like Imperial, Martial, Discipline, and Footwork all used. Many of her attacks are precise and efficient in their execution, which is befitting her years of experience. One might even be so bold to say that
this is the culmination of years of training.
There's even an after-battle quote where Mòrag comments on Zeke's characteristic style of combat and declares that some drivers value style over substance, and I think that really epitomizes her character.
Stay true to your disciplines.
Mòrag, you gotta teach me your thingy with the blue flames. Snazzy as hell.
Snazzy. I see. I had forgotten that some drivers value style over substance.
Speaking of these post-battle lines, there lies some gold hidden within the dozens and dozens of dialogue threads that solidify her dedication to Mòrag, such as,
I guard Lady Mòrag with my life. Don't forget it.
Hear, hear, Brighid. We go together. Pride of the Empire emblazoned on our hearts.
or her fascination with Rex and his endeavors as heard with,
Rex, I notice you have a habit of leaving yourself open. Guard him well, Pyra.
On it. Lady Mòrag, if I may, you seem very fond of the boy.
Lines like these are fantastic for character and relationship building, and I find that they do an exceptional job of strengthening Mòrag's character, in addition to showing off her more humorous side that occasionally rears its head.
Everything fine with you, Mòrag? No injuries?
Not a scratch. But I may require skincare.
Even the way that characters respond to Mòrag demonstrates an admiration and appreciation for her abilities, almost like a mentor, which reminds me strongly of Dunban from the original Xenoblade Chronicles, and there is nothing wrong with that. Whether on the battlefield or in a cutscene, Mòrag has such a commanding presence that when she's not on screen, all characters should be asking, "Where's Mòrag?" And I think that sentiment is the perfect way to discuss Mòrag's character arc. Although Mòrag's pivotal moment of development occurs slightly after the halfway point, her goals and motives persist all the way until the final cutscene. For that reason, I will be discussing the general trend of her progression over the entirety of Xenoblade Chronicles 2's narrative, with a larger quantity of the discussed cutscenes taking place before that specific scene in Chapter 6. Rewinding it back, Mòrag makes her grand debut in Chapter 2, and oh boy, does it leave an impression. Chapter 2 is built around shaping her character, which is initially accomplished by a few cutscenes of build-up via Brighid, as characters will comment on how strong the Fireblade is even without her driver. The most remarkable instance is the poor captain's abuse by the vicious Dougal.
Silence!
Is interrupted by the news that Lady Mòrag is personally coming to the province, and Dougal begins trembling at the name. I believe that this moment worked so well because, up until this point, the people of Mòrag have kind of been shown off as wacky. You have Dougal doing these weird hand gestures and reprimanding people to lighthearted music, Captain T.R.A.G not knowing the color emerald and boasting about Ethernets, and the rest of the soldiers spamming the sacred lines repeatedly. The Ardanian military feels kinda goofy. Outside of Brighid, of course, who is the sole reason that the soldiers were able to make anything happen in T.R.A.G. So when Dougal starts stammering and seizes up at the mention of Mòrag's name, this is a hint that she might be a stark contrast to the ludicrous personalities shown so far. Not to mention the title's Special Inquisitor, which just kind of exudes this air of prestige. The scene then cuts to a massive Titan warship that dwarfs the entirety of T.R.A.G itself. So you might be thinking, okay, wow, a whole fleet has to be coming out of that. Mòrag, not even accompanied by any soldiers, walks out from the ship and pauses for the audience to take in her serious expression and drive in an extreme close-up shot. I originally thought it was incredibly weird that a high-angle shot was used to reveal Mòrag, since they usually convey that the target seems vulnerable, and that might undermine her power. Yet I believe this angle was selected to best hide the identity and number of people coming from the ship's bridge. So when one single individual exits that massive warship after Dougal's freakout, it gives Mòrag a reputation in the player's mind almost immediately. This status is further solidified when Dougal comes to greet her, and he's the one that needs the backup. Throughout their conversation, Dougal only uses titles of respect, such as Your Grace and Special Inquisitor, while Mòrag does not hesitate to refer to him by name. If that wasn't enough, Mòrag is constantly putting Dougal in his place with commands and only one question. And before you ask, yes, it is a rhetorical question. Dear God, what a savage! Beyond her intimidating presence, Mòrag is also shown to be pretty cunning as she lures Rex and Pyra to her with rumors throughout town about Nia and Dromark's execution. All of these scenarios successfully illustrate Mòrag as a strong and competent character that is heavily goal-oriented. However, she does have a lighter side to her. She makes a dry humor joke about Nia's wanted poster and chuckles a bit following Nia's reply. By doing so, the writers have essentially made Mòrag more human in nature, as she isn't some emotionless machine completely driven by duty. And this notion is one that I believe is beautifully executed with Mòrag and Rex's confrontation. Rex and the party are trying to make their escape, and bam, you get a freaking firewall with two silhouettes walking through it. If that wasn't badass enough, you have Dromark giving an entire speech about Mòrag, the Flamebringer, who is the most powerful driver in the entire Empire. The title of Flamebringer is what's known as an epithet, and is a description or word used to characterize someone or something, and they were heavily used in Greek epics. Cunning Odysseus, bright-eyed Athena, swift-footed Achilles. All of these examples characterize and give the subject notoriety. So Mòrag's title not only tells the hero her element of choice, but it inspires fear and...
So together they're like ultra powerful.
Thank you, Rex. From the player's interactions with the Empire, one might assume that Mòrag and Brighid are an antagonist harboring a different breed of evil than that of T.R.A.G. Yet that's not the case. Mòrag makes it clear that her goal is not to use Pyra's Aegis abilities for nefarious means, but to stop another calamity like years ago. With that history presented and potential threat in place, it's understandable why Mòrag opposes the main party. Her goals align with Rex in the fact that she doesn't want Pyra to be used as a weapon, but their perspectives are completely different, which lead to her acting as a temporary antagonist and the battle at hand. Oh, have I mentioned that Mòrag frequently does cool poses and fiery whip swords might be one of the coolest things in the series? Cause, yeah, they are. And Mòrag's tenacity and ferocity come to life in this battle, completely overwhelming Rex and Pyra in raw combat with well-placed strikes, doing sick flips, and deflecting full power blasts with little effort. When writing a character and building them up through pure speech, you need to have a moment that makes one believe everything they were told, as well as sets the stage for future interactions. This fight is short and sweet, but certainly checks off these objectives. While Mòrag and Brighid do end up losing the encounter for some quick thinking by Rex, it's Mòrag's response that tops off her preliminary development.
I feel slighted.
How so?
They actually held back against me in battle.
Mòrag feels offended that they held back against her, and Rex's demonstration of power, wit, and drive allures her. This is what I like to call the Saiyan effect. When you find somebody that exhibits some characteristics you value and offers up a challenge, usually in respect to strength. Mòrag sees the sense of duty and loyalty toward Pyra in Rex, and I think she also sees herself in the young driver, which sparks some admiration and curiosity in her to such a level that she actually derails her objective to capture the Aegis. This choice is made solely in response to Mòrag's personal desires to learn and grow, which directly oppose her duty to her homeland. That is the core of Mòrag's inner conflict and arc. I realize this was a lot of information for a single chapter with... oh, 8 more to go.
Why are we still here?
Nevertheless, I find it wise to spend a lot of time breaking these scenes down, in particular since they establish a prominent side of her character. Following this battle, the narrative shifts its focus to Rex and Pyra's relationship in conjunction with that of the main party, which means that Mòrag's out of commission in a major way until the party begins to make preparations for a journey to Mòrag. In the cutscene, to be young again, a glimpse into Mòrag's own relationships and her patriotic persona is shown. The Emperor of Mòrag appears, and he's very wise, but incredibly young and not exactly what I'd expect from the leader of a militaristic nation. This tidbit, I feel, helps to paint the Ardanian army and Mòrag not as true villains, but simply people struggling in this bitter world. In addition, Niall is very calm and friendly, referring to Mòrag by name and dear sister, while Mòrag herself sticks to formalities with Your Majesty. Similar to Mòrag and Dougal's conversation, this is a prime example of the hierarchy found in Mòrag, but the contrast here is palpable. Niall's not looking down on Mòrag. His kindness is genuine, which leads to a disconnect of sorts. The player can tell that Niall genuinely views Mòrag as more than a soldier performing a duty, and as a family member. But Mòrag, likely due to her strict upbringing and disposition, tucks those reciprocated feelings away, perhaps out of fear that it would deter her from her focus, or that it would be unprofessional. The shots in this particular scene help the player understand the connection between these two, as there are a plentiful amount of close-up and over-the-shoulder shots. The close-ups allow for a proper view of each character's expressions, and the stoic, unwavering look of Mòrag practically opposes the warm, genuine face of Niall at times. As for the over-the-shoulder shots, these are typically used to connect two characters and depict equality in their emotional status. By that I mean there exists a legitimate relationship between Niall and Mòrag where they aren't trying to supersede or outmatch the other. This dynamic is quite intriguing and leads to the conclusion that maybe Mòrag is so dedicated to her duty and homeland because of Niall. However, another player has caught Mòrag's interest, and that is Rex. The young driver finds himself in the heart of Alba Cavanish under tricky circumstances, and is met with an unstoppable force. Oh, and Mòrag is there too, I guess. But it's what Mòrag has to say that's extremely interesting.
So, Rex, was it? Rex, I'm very disappointed to find you stooping to such lowly crimes.
The words disappointed and stooping imply a level of respect that has begun to degrade or has been betrayed, which would mean that Mòrag's encounter with Rex back in Chapter 2 truly did leave an impression. From her perspective, she's slightly dissatisfied that the driver of the Aegis might not be who she thought he would be. In the following duel, you can see Mòrag's curiosity and aptitude in battle slip through the cracks as she prods Rex with questions, picks up on her opponent's tendencies, and gets frustrated that her foe might be holding back again. And I like that after a truce is formed, Mòrag shares that she is greatly curious about Rex, Pyra, and Mithra's power. The real kicker comes in Mòrag's desire to stick close to Rex as she believes it will allow her to witness something extraordinary. Spoilers! That happens. Much like her decision to let the party run free in Gormott, this reason for teaming up with a group that was once adversaries is entirely personal. Does it tie into her duties as the Inquisitor? Yes, and I believe that's why she's able to rationalize this personal choice. For all we know by Ardanian code, this might not be the most optimal or wisest decision, and with that, she might be crossing a line. It's this moment that we see the personal desires and work-related duties of Mòrag start to come at odds a little bit more. Their overlap can be justified for the time being, but how long will that continue to hold true? The next big moment in Mòrag's character arc doesn't come until quite a bit later, but she does have an amazing moment in the fight against Mick and Petroka. A badass entrance, more people proving her widespread reputation by using her epithet and status, and even a smidgen of her humor coming out with some sass. I think that Mòrag's confidence and playful attitude stem from a stronger comfortability with the party and delight in the fact that she was right to trust them. The handshake in the Capitol might have been the original step in Mòrag's initiation into the party, but this moment feels like the first instance that Mòrag is a real member of the team. Let's fast forward to the party's arrival at Enel, where Mòrag has decided to continue her travels with the group on official duty, and feels like a natural addition. There's a very deep conversation initiated by Pyra that offers insight into Mòrag's objectives and reasoning. She stands among the Aegis, one half of the legendary duo of old and one known for their great power. The chance to see the Aegis in action captivated Mòrag, and partly explains why she let them run free in Gormott and avoided some of the formal processes in Mor Ardain. Had Rex, Pyra, and Mithra been under the Empire's jurisdiction, their ability to grow and Mòrag's chance to bear witness to such a development would have been severely hindered, if not completely eliminated. But as I said, that's only partly. Zeke calls Mòrag out for holding back information, which I think is her fascination with Rex. Each and every one of the party members joined Rex because they saw something in him. Mòrag is no exception, and it was that resolve in his eyes, one that convinced her that she would experience something incredible if she stood by him. Perhaps Mòrag just has a tough time admitting that she was inspired by the young driver, but all of these elements pay off in spades later. For now, let's talk about the climax of Mòrag's inner conflict. So the party's having a great old time in Enel. The Praetor's a swell guy. Rex gets another crush. But oh wait, that pesky Sephiroth-looking guy from those rapscallions in Torna hijacked a Judicium weapon in a demilitarized zone known as Temperantia and is using it to attack the Orion forces and initiate a massive war. Oh no! Yeah, Mòrag doesn't take the news of Mor Ardain attacking Uriah very well. Mòrag's been a fairly reserved individual throughout the game's cutscenes. She hasn't really shouted, gotten angry, or really shown any serious emotion that would deviate from her stringent presentation. Well, that is until—
Who gave that damn order?
Alright, let's rewind a bit for context. We know that Mòrag is incredibly loyal to two things: her country and those she cares about, which by association to her homeland would mean Niall in particular. When she's greeted with the news that Mor Ardain might be threatened by war, and it went directly against Niall's orders, the rage starts to seep out, and you can hear that within the irritated tone and hastened delivery in cutscenes.
You're saying we were waiting for a chance to strike? Unthinkable. our people would never go to war against His Majesty's will.
Although full-on war is delayed by Amalthus's intervention, this entire stretch acts as a rising action building toward the boiling point of Mòrag's emotional state. Tensions are high, her nation and Nile are in a perilous position, and she is involved in a handful of summits and meetings, so she must have a lot on her mind. All of this compounds into the big moment.
It can't be. To protect us, you... Please wake up. Nio! Nio!
In a burst of emotions, Mòrag breaks the formal, strict persona the player is accustomed to, as she believes she has lost her emperor, a family member, and the one she cares the most for. To truly illustrate how she has shattered that shell, Mòrag refers to Nile by name for the first time in the entire game. This cutscene wonderfully depicts Mòrag as someone with more than a cold exterior, but someone that values the connections they have. Luckily, Nia heals Nile and all is well. Nile and Mòrag have a conversation where he figuratively sets her free from the shackles of responsibility. He gives her permission to travel with the group because he can tell she desires to stay with Rex, and all he wants is to give his cousin the opportunity to pursue what she always longed for. They even have the chance to reminisce on cherished memories, and it's just a wonderfully wholesome moment that balances the relationship between these two. With Nile's blessing, Aegaeon's core crystal, and a renewed purpose, Mòrag's major arc concludes as she continues the journey with the Aegis. However, her story isn't over. She still yearns for that great discovery to happen, and while there is still plenty of game left, I'd like to wrap this up with two particular moments. The first of these is the Spirit Crucible Elpis, where the third sword disintegrates and hope among the party quickly diminishes. Yet Mòrag is different. Just like she saw that resolve back in Gormott, she notes that she has seen it again, which is done through one of my personal favorite lines in the game.
I'm with you. I've seen that look in your eyes before.
And I adore how Rex doesn't even have to vocally respond to Mòrag for her to be on board with whatever comes next. That right there is true dedication and trust, which I find to be a pretty organic method of relationship building. The other moment of discussion waits at the story's conclusion, after their journey to the World Tree and Mòrag finally achieving her goal and seeing momentous things like the identity of Elysium, the architect himself, and the true power of the Aegis. Unfortunately, that very same Aegis has decided to stay behind to give the others a chance, and Rex is now at one of his lowest points with the realization that he can't save Numa. As the song Parting comes to a pause, Mòrag moves to Rex alongside the isolated brass and finally reveals how much she values her time with her new friends. All of this before she slowly moves to bow in appreciation and respect to Numa, the living legend and one of the people responsible for allowing her to take part in such a grand journey. Mòrag might lack some of the complexities of her fellow leads, but there's still legitimate and natural development that takes place within her. Her superb design, insanely fun playstyle, and well-paced arc all amount to a competently written character. From a badass looking character in a trailer to one burdened by the conflict between personal desires and responsibility, Mòrag is certainly an example of more than meets the eye. Stoic and rigid, but also kind and passionate below the surface. Mòrag is one of my favorites from the series, and that's part of the reason this episode took so long to make. So, here's to you, Mòrag Ladair, the Flamebringer. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this video and would like to leave a like or subscribe to the channel, it is always greatly appreciated. From looking at the analytics, I actually noticed that about 75% of people that watch the videos are not subscribed to the channel, so if you'd like to see more content like this, or potentially see the number go down a little bit, then we'd love to have you be a part of this channel here. I've had to move my goal for the channel multiple times because the support has just been so insane over the course of this year, but I guess I would like to try and end off here with a little bit of an ambitious goal by the end of the year and see if we can hit 7K subscribers here on the channel. I also haven't mentioned this in a while, but I do stream over on Twitch. I'm currently going through Snake Eater with a group of people right now. Snake Eater is my favorite story in any video game. Big Boss is my favorite character, so if you're interested in checking that out or just any other games in the future, check out the link in the description down down below. The past couple weeks, as well as just the rest of the semester, are going to be pretty busy just because I have 2 major papers that I need to do in conjunction with just my own work. But the plan right now is to have 2 major releases come out by the end of the year. One of them has been pretty highly requested, and the other one I think is going to be a fun video if everything turns out appropriately, so look forward to those. But anyways, I think that's really going to be it for me, guys, so thank you so much as usual for all the support, and until next time.